her lifetime goals. My book is basically, I give you all the essential steps that it takes for you to achieve your goals, especially, and it's a guide for women. At a very, 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 very hard time in my life, I just was on the verge of giving up. And when I mean giving up, I sat in my house every night saying, this will be the night where I will take my life. But what no one knew is when I went to work, I put on the mask. I put on the mask, I smiled, I carried on every day, not even knowing that, no one knew that when I went home, that was my battle. I battled every night. And I did not know how I was going to get out of that. I just was like, I did not want to do it. But, I mean, at that point, that's what I was going through. So, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous because this is my first time really telling the whole story, Sabrina. But basically, I was just really going through a bad and hard time after a very, very hard breakup. I was in a relationship for 10 years. 10 years where I submitted myself, not just myself, but which I call my good years, but what I did not know, those were not my good years. From the age of 22 to 33, I was in a relationship for 10 years. 10 years where this man beat me to contusions on my ribs. I had got beaten so bad that I had wound up having an aneurysm. I got the aneurysm removed by the grace of God. He found it, but at that time, I thought that relationship was just all that, I thought that was my purpose. But not knowing that God was putting me through that so that I could be able to be here right now to encourage the woman that's on the verge of getting up, that's on the verge of every night at home, crying her eyes out, on the verge of giving up, on the verge of going through a bad relationship, that's not your purpose. That's not it. You are still purposeful after adversities, after depression, after suicide thoughts, after anything that may be in the verge of making you just want to stop. So basically, who does she think she is? I just wrote about the things that I had been going through and how I overcame them. I overcame my depression. I overcame my suicide thoughts because I had really just got on my knees and I submitted. I put my hands up and I said, God, if any way possible, I don't want to do this, but I'm tired of coming home every night just wanting to take my life. So I just said, I don't know how you're going to do it because there's nothing has been wanting to make me stop wanting to do it, but I don't know how you're going to do it, but I knew, and I stepped out on faith that I knew that God was going to do it because there was no other way. So I submitted and I said, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I had faith. So I had came across a book, which is crazy because I came across the book one night and I read the book, and at that time I was like, this is it. Just like that, God will speak to you through people, places, and things. And the thing that saved my life was a book. And after reading that book, oh my gosh, I said, you know what, this is it. It was an inspirational book and it was free. Downloaded it that night from, I don't know, you may be familiar with Chanel Cooper Sykes. She has a book out and I would never ever forget this book. It was called Elevation. I read that book, I think that whole night I stayed up. That was one of the nights where I was on the verge, but I came across the book and I read the book and I was blown away. And all I could say was, thank you, God, you did it. I didn't know how he was going to do it, but he did. So after I overcame all the adversities and everything that I was going through, I just did not want another woman going through what I went through. I didn't want a woman on the verge of giving up to give up. I didn't want a woman to be battling depression because of a breakup. I didn't want, so I just said, how can I reach the woman that is the masses of women, not just one, but how can I reach the masses of women that are going through the same thing that I had? How can I reach them? How can my voice be heard? So I wrote this book, and I just tell you a little bit about my story. And not only do I tell you about my story, but I give you the essential steps that it takes for you to conquer your goals. Because when I read Elevation, it had said something about, women should be on the forefront, and women should be on yachts and entrepreneurs and business owners. So I said, yes, we should. Like, I felt the same way. So what I had went through, I had just, taken myself out of myself, wrote my book, and I gave you the steps that it took me to write the book. But though, if you apply those same steps to whatever it is that you want to do, I'm sure that you will be able to, be that entrepreneur, that you'll be able to open that business, that you'll be able to take on that management job, that you'll be able to walk into a room and have others question, who does she think she is?
And just a whole bunch of different things that make life extremely, extremely difficult. And this beginning of Bigger Than My Diagnosis just came because I was so depressed. This time last year, they thought I had MS. It was, do you have a tumor? Do you have MS? I wasn't walking. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't dress myself. I was completely and totally dependent on everyone else around me. That was less than a year ago now. And here I stand as an author, a CEO, a self-development coach, all of that, simply because God decided to raise me up to tell me that I can be bigger so that I can tell other people that they are bigger. Because what happens in today's society is cancer seems to be the only socially acceptable disease. But it's not the disease that affects the African American community the most, but it's the only one we talk about. And then when people come who have other diagnoses, it's like we look at them like there's something wrong with them, and it's not. They're not. You're more than that. The doctors treat you as you're just your diagnosis. Even at times your family can treat you like you're just your diagnosis. You treat yourself as though you're just your diagnosis. And Bigger Than My Diagnosis is all about teaching you and telling you that that's not it. There's more to your life. There's more to everything around you. And not only is there more to your life, but it's your job and responsibility to use every single thing that you've been through to empower and help someone else go through what you've been through. But so they don't have to make the same mistakes. But what happens is we're ashamed into silence. And I can't stand that. I can't stand when people find out that you have a diagnosis and they think you should be quiet. As if that means that I'm less of a person. As if that means that my voice doesn't matter. And that's not it. And my only goal is to tell as many of our stories as possible. I have an international blog, and I started something called Busy Being Bigger Fridays. And every Friday I feature someone from around the world, and I let them tell their own stories. I let them send me a picture, and I post exactly what they write. And it's empowering because most of the time they've never sat down and wrote their story out. They've never said anything about it. They're like, wait, you want me to tell my story? And I'm like, yeah. Well, how should I write it? Any way you want to. I don't alter anything. I post exactly what they say. And the response to it is, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to speak up. Thank you for reminding me that I have a voice. Thank you for giving me life outside of the painful diagnosis that I'm dealing with. And I'm also a self-development coach, which I'm very proud of that because I took all the tools that I used to go from where I was depressed and trying to commit suicide to where I am today. And I teach self-love and self-care through positivity. So my book is called Finding the Bigger You, a 28-day guide to loving yourself to freedom. And it is broken down into 6 parts. And it takes you through subconscious self-hatred, hurt, and pain that you haven't quite dealt with. In my experience, we don't really love ourselves. You get up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and you actually tear yourself apart while you're getting dressed. But you do it on such a subconscious level that you don't even realize it. And then you wonder why your interactions with the world around you are altered and why the world around you looks ugly. But in reality, it's because you see yourself as something that's ugly and bad and horrible. And the steps in my book take you through owning that. You have to own the fact that you hate yourself before you can be delivered from that hatred. And the problem is we're not even encouraged to look ourselves in the mirror. How many of us in this room actually can say that you look yourself in the mirror every day and you say, you're beautiful, I love you, you're amazing, you can do this? We don't. And then we wonder why our lives look the way they do. Before you can conquer the world, be a CEO, be an entrepreneur, rise up the corporate ladder, you need to deal with you. And a lot of times we don't. And on the inside, we're a mess. And one of the other things that the book takes you through is past hurt and pain. Because hurt and pain are two totally different things, but we don't realize that they're separate. And not only do we not realize that they're separate, we push all of that down in favor of functionality, but in reality, we're broken. We haven't taken time enough to realize that we're broken enough to put the pieces back together. So we're just walking. These broken children become broken adults who are incapable of maintaining healthy relationships. And we wonder why divorce is running rampant and things are running rampant that make it seem like we can't even hold on to relationships. People, I'm your friend Monday and I'm not your friend on Wednesday, but why? And it has nothing to do with the other person. It's because you never dealt with your own hurt and your own pain. You think that you could just walk up and go through life every single day suppressing all of the things that really are hurting you. And finding the bigger in you is about owning all of those things. And at the end of the day, looking at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you know what? You survived. Wow, you're amazing. And it takes you through that psychological process to really, really own the fact that you are an incredible being. How many of you, like sitting here, you don't have to say it, but how many of you really understand that you're an incredibly spiritual, amazing, mighty, empowered being? And if you don't, you need to get my book so it can help you with all that. But if you don't know that, you need to tell yourself that. That's fair. You can't love the whole world around you and you never show yourself that you love you. That's disrespectful. And I'm not about to be disrespecting myself. I'm a black woman in America. Society disrespects me enough. I refuse to disrespect myself on that level. And my goal is, I don't care if I'm a bestseller. That's not, I don't want the fame. I want my book to get into as many people's hands as possible so we can conquer these things that are tearing down our communities. And we wonder why we can't fight against systems of injustice is because we haven't yet repaired broken relationships. And the most important broken relationships that we're not dealing with is the relationship with self. We're taught to be self-centered and shallow, but it's a facade. Because you can't be self-centered and full of hatred for you. It doesn't matter how much makeup you put on, how fly you get, how much your eyebrows are on fleek, and your lip gloss and your lipstick is popping. It doesn't matter if you hate yourself. It doesn't matter if when you take all that stuff off, you're empty. You're nothing. I've literally sat down with people, and one of the exercises in the book is you have to stand in front of a mirror and write down all the things you dislike about yourself. And I took someone through those exercises, and I said, what do you see when you look in the mirror? And they said, nothing. I said, you don't see anything? They said, no, nothing. How many people really, really see something when you're looking at yourself? How many of you actually engage in relationships that value you? Or are you just engaging in relationships that make you feel better because you're so broken and they make the pieces of you feel whole so you think that you need them? So then you wind up in these unhealthy relationships and wonder why you're being abused on so many different ends. That person's not your soulmate. They're just a piece to the broken puzzle that you decided to call your life. And the goal is to find the bigger you. Whatever that means. If finding the bigger you means changing the way you dress, or if it means just falling in love with yourself, if it means going to the park every day and swinging on the swing, whatever finding the bigger you means, but empower yourself. Love yourself and care about yourself enough to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. And finding the bigger me has led to just so many different opportunities. Davita is my business bestie, and I just love her life. And if I hadn't found the bigger me, I would have never had that type of relationship, and I would have never met so many people like Tiffany, and I think she's amazing. But I've met so many of these amazing people. Why? Because I decided to find the bigger me. And it's led to such a remarkable life. I was in the White House a couple weeks ago, like in the White House. And I just was sitting there like, God, I'm in the White House. Like real. Like they let me in. And it's like, wow, look what God can do. But if we want God to change our lives, but we're not willing to put the work in, then you don't really want to change. You just want to say that. You just want to hear yourself talk. I don't want people to be broken anymore. I want them to put themselves back together and feel empowered. And this is not one of those self-help books where, you know, the people you walk by in the supermarket and they're standing there looking at you like, yeah, you can do it. No, because sometimes those people have never actually been through anything. They're just writing stuff down that doesn't even make any sense. These are actual steps I took, and it's filled with poems that I wrote from my perspective when I was broken. And for me to stand here today and say I've tried to commit suicide 7 times, and now I own my own business, that tells you that I'm not just speaking, I'm not just writing, I'm actually trying to help you save your life. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death in the African American community. 3rd. Homicide is 10th. So it's not just a book, it is about saving lives. That's